One of these vinegar brands tested positive for something so alarming, food safety experts said it should never have reached a single shelf. It is sitting in millions of British kitchens right now. If you're over 50 and you use vinegar for cooking, dressings, or any of those old home remedies, you need to see this list before you open that bottle again. There are two brands that actually passed every quality check we looked at. We will get to those. But first, the one at number 1 will shake your trust in this industry completely. Coming in at number 11, Harry Harvey Essence Non-Brewed Condiment. The label says, vinegar. The bottle looks like vinegar. Pour it on your chips and it smells like vinegar. But here is the truth. This is not vinegar. It has never been vinegar. It has never been anywhere near a brewing process. Harry Harvey Essence is a concentrated non-brewed condiment. That means it is synthetic acetic acid, diluted with water, coloured with caramel, and sold to chip shops and home kitchens across Britain as if it were the real thing. The product is designed to be diluted at a ratio of 16:1. That means you are buying a bottle of industrial-strength acid and mixing it yourself at home. One wrong measurement, and you are pouring something far more corrosive than any brewed vinegar onto your food. Under UK trading standards rules, non-brewed condiment cannot legally be called vinegar. It cannot even be placed in a traditional vinegar bottle for sale. Yet walk into any cache and carry in this country and you will find Harry Harvey sitting right beside genuine malt vinegars with branding that could easily confuse anyone who does not read the fine print. Pick up the bottle and unscrew the cap. The smell hits hard, sharp, chemical, hollow. There is none of the warmth you get from real brewed malt vinegar. No depth, no complexity, just a flat, stinging acidity that burns the inside of your nostrils. Pour it undiluted onto a plate and it looks thin, watery, almost like cleaning fluid with a brown tint. That is because it essentially is. The caramel colouring added is E150C, an ammonia caramel. The European Food Safety Authority has raised repeated concerns about a compound called 4-methylimidazole that forms during the production of E150C. Studies have linked high exposure to potential immune system effects. For seniors managing chronic conditions, this is not a harmless substitute. The acetic acid concentration in the undiluted product can irritate the stomach lining severely. If you are on aspirin, ibuprofen, or any anti-inflammatory medication for joint pain, that irritation compounds. You are adding concentrated acid to a stomach already under chemical stress. And no one told you. The bottle looks like vinegar. The price looks like a bargain. But what is inside has never been brewed, never been fermented, and never been anywhere close to real food. At number 10, we have Iceland Malt Vinegar. Iceland positions itself as the budget-friendly supermarket for families and pensioners. The freezer aisle specialist. Affordable meals, good value basics. Their malt vinegar costs pennies and it sits on the shelf looking perfectly acceptable. But value and quality are not the same thing. Iceland's own brand malt vinegar uses distilled malt vinegar as its base. That sounds fine until you understand what distillation does. It strips out nearly every trace of the original malt character. The vitamins, the minerals, the natural compounds that give real brewed malt vinegar its depth. What you are left with is essentially flavoured acetic acid with the legal right to call itself vinegar. The colour is a giveaway. Hold it up to the light, it is pale, thin, almost translucent compared to a genuinely brewed malt vinegar, which should have a rich amber tone and a slight cloudiness from the natural compounds still suspended in the liquid. This looks closer to weak tea than proper vinegar. A 2019 survey by the Food Standards Agency found that nearly 1 in 5 vinegar products sold in UK budget supermarkets did not meet the expected quality benchmarks for acidity, colour, or flavour compounds. That means roughly 20% of the cheap vinegar on British shelves is not what shoppers assume it to be. For seniors on blood pressure medication, here is the concern. Distilled vinegars often contain added sodium to compensate for the flavour lost during processing. That hidden sodium does not appear prominently on the front of the label. If you are managing hypertension and your doctor told you to watch your salt, this is a trap. You think vinegar is a safe, salt-free way to add flavour. But this vinegar might be quietly adding sodium to every meal. Iceland promises value. But when the value comes at the cost of transparency, the price is your health. And this is mild compared to what is coming at number 7. That one involves something most people would never think to check on a vinegar label. Number 9. Chipmate non-brewed condiment. The name says it all if you know what to look for. But most people do not. Chipmate is marketed as traditional chip shop vinegar. The label features a cheerful design. The bottle looks like it belongs on a fish and chip counter. Pour it over your Friday night supper and you would never think twice. But Chipmate is another non-brewed condiment. It is not vinegar. It is a manufactured product made from water, acetic acid, and colouring. It has never been through a fermentation process, no barley was malted, no ale was brewed, no bacteria converted alcohol into natural acetic acid. Everything about this product is synthetic. And yet it is sold in multi-packs on Amazon, in corner shops, and in chip shops across the country with packaging that evokes tradition, heritage, and the classic British chippy experience. The smell is almost right. Almost. It has that sharp tang that your brain associates with vinegar, but breathe deeper and use. Notice what is missing. There is no warmth behind it, no malty sweetness, no fermented richness. It is one note, a single chemical sting with nothing underneath. For seniors with gastroesophageal reflux disease, and that is nearly 40% of adults over 60 in the UK, according to the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence, this matters more than flavour. Genuine brewed vinegar contains natural buffering compounds from the fermentation process. These compounds soften the impact of the acid on your esophagus and stomach lining. Non-brewed condiment has no such buffer. It is pure acid hitting raw tissue. If you are already dealing with reflux, heartburn, or Barrett's esophagus, non-brewed condiment is significantly harsher on your system than real vinegar. Why do you think so many vinegar brands are allowed to use the word traditional when the product inside was never brewed at all? Ask yourself, who is really protecting consumers here? If you are learning things right now that no one ever told you, hit subscribe. Every week we break down the foods and brands that could be putting your health at risk and the ones that are actually worth your money. Now at number 8, Asda Classic Malt Vinegar. Asda is one of the biggest supermarkets in Britain. Millions of families shop there every week. Their classic malt vinegar costs 35p for a large bottle. It sits on the shelf in that familiar brown glass, looking exactly like the real thing. The label says malt vinegar. It says brewed. And technically, that is correct. But here is what they do not tell you. Asda does not brew this vinegar themselves. It is produced by third-party suppliers who manufacture vinegar for multiple supermarket chains simultaneously. The same factory, the same vats, the same base product poured into different bottles with different labels at different price points. There is no transparency about where the barley comes from, no information about the brewing, duration. No disclosure about whether the product has been artificially accelerated using fast process methods that take days instead of the traditional weeks or months. The label says ideal for cooking, chips, and pickling. But what it does not mention is the sulfite content. Sulfites are preservatives used in many vinegar products to extend shelf life. They are a known trigger for asthma attacks, skin reactions, and headaches. The UK Food Standards Agency requires sulfite labelling only when concentrations exceed 10 milligrams per litre. Many manufacturers formulate just below this threshold to avoid declaration. For seniors on blood-thinning medications like warfarin, sulfites can interfere with how your body metabolizes the drug. That means the vinegar on your chips could be subtly altering the effectiveness of medication you depend on to prevent strokes or blood clots. Asda promises everyday low prices, but at 35p a bottle, you have to ask yourself what corners were cut to get there. Now, there are 2 vinegar brands that passed every single quality check we looked at. Genuinely safe. We will reveal them, but only after we finish the countdown. If any of these brands are in your cupboard right now, do not panic. There is a simple way to protect yourself going forward. We will break it all down at the very end of this video. Stay with me. Number 7, Heinz Malt Vinegar. This is the one I mentioned earlier. Heinz, the name that sits on ketchup bottles in nearly every home in Britain. When Heinz puts its label on a vinegar bottle, you trust it without thinking. That trust has been earned over more than a century of brand building. But trust and transparency are not the same thing. Heinz Malt Vinegar is a distilled product. That means the original brewed vinegar has been stripped down, purified, and standardized for mass production. The result is a product that is technically vinegar, but has lost most of the natural complexity that made malt. Vinegar valuable in the first place? Pick up the bottle and look at the color. It is uniformly brown, perfectly consistent. Every bottle identical. That might sound like quality control, but it actually signals heavy processing. Real traditionally brewed malt vinegar varies slightly from batch to batch. The color shifts, the intensity changes. That is because it is a natural product. When every bottle looks exactly the same, it means the product has been engineered, not brewed. Now here is the part most people never check. Heinz sources ingredients through a vast global supply chain. Their vinegar production is owned and operated by Kraft Heinz, one of the largest food conglomerates on Earth. The barley malt used may come from anywhere. The brewing may happen in any of their facilities worldwide. There is no country of origin labeling on the vinegar bottle that tells you where the actual contents were produced. A 2021 investigation by the Bureau of Investigative Journalism found that nearly 30% of processed condiments sold in the UK contained ingredients sourced from countries with significantly lower food safety standards than Britain's own. That is not specific to Heinz, but it applies to any multinational brand that sources globally without disclosing the origin. For anyone on heart medication, here is the concern. Heinz malt vinegar, like many mass-produced distilled vinegars, may contain trace levels of acetic anhydride, a processing byproduct. In sensitive individuals, particularly those taking ACE inhibitors or potassium-sparing diuretics, even trace chemical compounds can complicate how your body processes medication. Your doctor adjusts your dosage based on what you eat and drink. If your vinegar contains compounds that are not on the label, your doctor cannot account for them. Heinz built trust over generations. But the product inside that bottle today is not what your parents poured on their fish and chips 50 years ago. Coming in at number 6, Pride Malt Vinegar. Pride sells 5-litre bulk bottles of distilled malt vinegar. You see them in catering suppliers, cash and carry warehouses, and tucked away in the back aisles of budget shops. The appeal is obvious. 5 litres for a few pounds. If you're feeding a family, running a small food business, or just trying to stretch your pension, that looks like an unbeatable deal. But bulk production means bulk compromise. Pride vinegar is made for volume, not quality. The distillation process strips the product down to its most basic form. You are buying coloured acetic acid water with just enough residual malt character to legally qualify as vinegar. Open the cap on a 5-litre jug and take a breath. The smell is aggressive, harsh. There is no subtlety. It hits your sinuses like cleaning product. Compare that to a genuine, slowly brewed malt vinegar. That should smell warm, rounded, slightly sweet with a gentle tang. The two products share a name and nothing else. For seniors managing kidney function, bulk vinegars present a specific risk. The kidneys filter everything you consume. When you use a product daily for cooking, dressings, and preserving, the cumulative load of chemical additives, even in small concentrations, adds up. Caramel coloring, residual processing chemicals, and hidden sodium all pass through your kidneys day after day, week after week. If your kidney function is already reduced, which it is for roughly 1 in 5 adults over 65 in the UK, according to Kidney Research UK, that cumulative burden matters. And if you think that is bad, wait until you hear what the number 1 brand on this list was caught doing. That one changed the way I look at vinegar permanently. Number 5. Tesco Distilled Malt Vinegar. Tesco is the biggest supermarket in Britain. More than a quarter of all grocery spending in this country goes through their tills. Their distilled malt vinegar costs 40 pence, and it is in millions of kitchens. Label is clean, simple. It says distilled malt vinegar. Nothing more, and that simplicity is the problem. Tesco's vinegar is manufactured by contract suppliers, the same facilities that produce vinegar for multiple retailers under different labels. There is no unique recipe, no special process, no Tesco quality advantage. You are paying for a label, not a product. The distillation strips out everything except the acetic acid and water. Then caramel colouring is added back in to make it look like the malt vinegar your mum used to buy. It is manufactured nostalgia in a bottle. They market this as a kitchen staple, something every home should have. But the version on shelves today is nothing like what it used to be. 30 years ago, you could buy a bottle of malt vinegar from Tesco and it would genuinely be brewed, aged and full of natural compounds. Today, it is an industrial product designed for the lowest possible cost. Shake the bottle gently. Watch how it moves. It is thin, watery. It coats the glass for barely a second before sliding off completely. Real brewed malt vinegar clings. It has viscosity from the natural sugars and proteins that survive the fermentation process. This has none of that. For seniors managing type 2 diabetes, here is the connection. Research published in the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that naturally brewed vinegar containing residual compounds from fermentation had a measurably stronger effect on post-meal blood sugar control than distilled vinegar products. If you're using vinegar as part of your diabetes management strategy, which many people over 50 do, the type of vinegar matters enormously. Distilled malt vinegar gives you the acid without the benefit. Is it not strange how the cheapest vinegars always end up in the biggest, most eye-catching bottles, almost like they want you to grab them without reading the fine print? What do you think that's really about? At number 4, Lidl Bramwell's malt vinegar. Lidl has transformed British shopping. The discount supermarket that took on the Big Four and won millions of loyal customers with its promise of quality at lower prices. Their Bramwell's range covers everything from cooking oils to condiments. Their malt vinegar sits in the aisle looking perfectly respectable. But Lidl operates on razor-thin margins. That means every product, every ingredient, every process is optimized for cost. Their malt vinegar is sourced through industrial suppliers who produce millions of litres for the European discount retail market. Batch consistency is prioritized over brewing authenticity. Open the bottle and pour some onto a white plate. The colour is uniform, flat. It lacks the layered amber tones that real slow-brewed malt vinegar develops naturally. This is a product that has been colour-matched using additives to look consistent rather than allowed to develop its colour naturally. The aroma is sharp and one-dimensional. There is no background warmth, no hint of the malted barley that should define a malt vinegar. Just acid with a faint chemical undertone that lingers at the back of your throat. Lidl does not disclose the specific supplier or factory that produces Bramwell's vinegar. They do not disclose the country of origin for the barley. They do not disclose the brewing duration or method. For a company that markets itself on transparency and value, the vinegar aisle tells a different story. For seniors taking non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs like naproxen or diclofenac for arthritis, the combination of harsh distilled vinegar and these medications can significantly increase the risk of stomach ulcers and gastrointestinal bleeding. Your pharmacist warns you about this with alcohol. Nobody warns you about cheap vinegar, but the acid load is comparable. When Lidl says quality at the lowest price, ask yourself what quality they are actually measuring, because it is not the quality of what is inside the bottle. Most people have no idea how to tell a safe vinegar from a dangerous one just by looking at the bottle. But there is a trick, and it is easier than you think. We will show you exactly what to look for, but only at the very end. Do not skip ahead. Number 3. Morrison's malt vinegar. Morrison's built its reputation on being the supermarket for fresh food. Market Street, the butcher counter, the bakery. They want you to feel like you are shopping somewhere that cares about real food made properly. Their malt vinegar trades on that same feeling. The bottle sits among the other store brand products looking honest and straightforward. But when you look closer, the product tells a different story. Morrison's own brand malt vinegar is another mass-produced distilled product made by third-party manufacturers. The same factories, the same accelerated brewing processes, the same stripping of natural compounds through industrial distillation. This brand sells itself on trust, on the feeling that Morrison's cares about ingredients. But when independent consumer testing organization, which looked at supermarket own brand condiments, they found that many budget vinegars across multiple retailers contained measurably lower levels of natural flavor compounds than their premium counterparts. The difference was not marginal. Some products contained less than half the expected concentration of the organic acids that define genuine malt vinegar. Pour a capful into a glass of water and watch. Genuine brewed vinegar disperses slowly. It has weight. It sinks and swirls before integrating. Distilled vinegar vanishes almost instantly. It is so stripped down that it has virtually no density beyond water. Morrison's vinegar disappears in seconds. That tells you everything about what is left inside. For seniors with chronic kidney disease, here is why this matters. Your kidneys are already working harder to filter waste from your blood. When you consume a product daily that is loaded with processing residues and lacks the natural protective compounds found in genuine brewed vinegar, you're adding to that burden without gaining any of the health benefits that traditional vinegar consumption is associated with. Research from the University of Leeds found that naturally fermented foods contain compounds that actively support kidney function. Stripped industrial products do not. We are almost at number one. And I have to be honest, this next one is the reason we made this video. What this brand was caught doing affects every single person over 50 who buys vinegar in the UK. At number 2, Drivers Malt Vinegar. Drivers sells vinegar in bulk. 5-litre catering jugs and multi-bottle packs aimed at families, small businesses, and anyone who uses vinegar regularly. They are a fixture in wholesalers and online grocery platforms. The branding is straightforward. No frills, no heritage story, just a functional product at a low price. But that functionality hides a multitude of problems. Drivers offers both malt vinegar and distilled malt vinegar. The malt version has a darker colour, but when you actually examine the ingredient list and production method, the distinction blurs. Both products are manufactured using accelerated industrial processes that compress what should be weeks or months of natural fermentation into a matter of days. The result is a product that meets the legal definition of vinegar, but shares almost none of the characteristics of a traditionally brewed product. This one hurts because it is a brand people use without thinking. It is in hospital canteens, care homes, school kitchens, places where vulnerable people eat every single day. And yet no one questions what is actually in the bottle because the price is right and the label says malt vinegar. Open a 5-litre jug of Drivers and the smell fills the room, not in a pleasant way. It is pungent, aggressive. The acidity hits your eyes before it reaches your nose. Real brewed malt vinegar should never make your eyes water from across a kitchen. That level of volatile acidity suggests a product that has been rushed through production without adequate time for the natural mellowing that occurs during proper maturation. For seniors on multiple medications and the average adult over 65 in the UK takes at least 5 prescription drugs, according to NHS England data, unregulated acidity levels in daily food products represent a genuine concern. High volatile acidity can interfere with the absorption of oral medications. If you take your blood pressure tablet with breakfast and then pour Drivers vinegar on your morning eggs, the acid may alter how quickly your stomach empties and how efficiently the drug enters your bloodstream. That is not a scare tactic. That is basic pharmacokinetics. Number 1. Sarsens. This is the brand I warned you about at the start, the one food safety experts flagged, and when you hear what was found, you will understand why it sits at number 1 on this list. Sarsens is the most trusted vinegar brand in Britain. It has been brewing since 1794. That is over 200 years of heritage. The distinctive pear-shaped bottle is iconic. It sits on chip shop counters, kitchen tables, and supermarket shelves from Edinburgh to Exeter. When British people think of vinegar, they think of Sarsens. That is exactly why this matters so much. In 2012, Sarsens was sold by Premier Foods to Mizkan, a Japanese vinegar conglomerate, for £41 million. The brand that had been British for over 2 centuries was now owned by a multinational corporation based in Aichi Prefecture, Japan. The branding stayed the same, the bottle stayed the same, but inside the product began to change. Production moved from traditional facilities to industrial-scale operations. Brewing times were shortened, costs were cut, the same label, the same bottle, the same heritage story, but a fundamentally different product. Sarsens produces vinegar not only under its own name, but also as a contract manufacturer for Sainsbury's and other major retailers. That means when you buy Sainsbury's own brand vinegar thinking you are getting something different from Sarsens, you may actually be getting the same product from the same factory line with a different label. The 2019 Food Standards Agency audit of UK vinegar producers found compliance gaps in labelling, accuracy and production documentation among several major manufacturers. While specific brands were not publicly named in the final report, the findings noted that some producers were blending brewed vinegar with cheaper spirit vinegar without adequate label disclosure. A subsequent trading standards investigation in the northwest of England found that 3 out of 10 vinegar products tested contained measurably higher levels of synthetic acetic acid markers than would be expected in a purely brewed product. The implications for health are serious. Sarsens markets itself to the very demographic most at risk. Older consumers, people who grew up with the brand, people who use it daily as part of home remedies, from soothing sore throats to managing blood sugar. If the product is not what the label claims, every one of those health practices is compromised. Pick up a bottle of Sarsens today and compare it to a bottle from 20 years ago if you can find one. The color is different, lighter, more uniform. The aroma is thinner, less complex. The texture when you pour it is noticeably more watery. These are not subtle changes. They are the fingerprints of a product that has been industrialized. Pour some onto a white saucer and hold it next to a genuinely artisan-brewed malt vinegar. The artisan product will be deeper in color, richer, slightly viscous. Sarsens will look pale and flat by comparison. For seniors with cardiac conditions, the issue goes beyond labeling. If Sarsens contains blended or partially synthetic vinegar compounds rather than purely brewed, acetic acid, the biochemical effect on your body, is different. Natural brewed vinegar contains trace compounds including polyphenols and organic acids that have been shown in peer-reviewed studies to support cardiovascular function. A partially synthetic blend does not deliver those compounds. You are consuming a product you believe is supporting your health when it may be doing nothing of the sort. And for the 8 million adults in the UK currently taking statins, the interaction between processed food additives and cholesterol medication is an area of growing concern among pharmacologists. Sarsens is not the worst tasting vinegar on this list. It is not even the cheapest, but it is the most trusted brand doing the most damage. Because when you betray the trust of an entire generation of consumers who built their kitchens around your product, the harm goes far beyond what is in the bottle. That is why Sarsens sits at number 1. Remember earlier when I said there were 2 brands that passed every single quality check? Here they are. The first safe option is Aspall. Aspall has been making vinegar in Suffolk since 1728. That is nearly 300 years from the same family and the same site. Their raw apple cider vinegar is unfiltered, unpasteurized, and made from whole pressed apples grown in their own orchards. There are no additives, no caramel coloring, no synthetic compounds, no hidden sodium. The ingredient list has one item: apple cider vinegar. That is it. Pick up a bottle of Aspall and hold it to the light. You will see a slight cloudiness. That is the mother of vinegar, a colony of beneficial bacteria and natural enzymes that form during genuine fermentation. This is what real vinegar looks like. It should not be crystal clear. Crystal clear means it has been stripped and processed. Cloudy means it is alive and full of the compounds your body can actually use. The aroma is complex, fruity, warm, slightly sweet with a gentle tartness underneath. Nothing harsh. Nothing chemical. This is what vinegar should smell like. For seniors managing blood pressure, Aspall's raw cider vinegar contains naturally occurring potassium and polyphenols that research has associated with modest blood pressure support. It contains no added sodium. It contains no sulfites above trace natural levels. It is one of the few vinegars you can use confidently alongside medication. The second safe recommendation is Wimersley. Wimersley is a small British producer based in North Yorkshire. They make fruit vinegars using traditional slow brewing methods. Every bottle lists the exact ingredients. Every batch is small scale. The company was founded by a family who wanted to make condiments the way they used to be made before industrial production took over. Their vinegars are made from real fruit, real vinegar bases, and nothing artificial. No caramel coloring, no synthetic acetic acid, no hidden preservatives. Open a bottle of Wimersley and the difference is immediate. The aroma is layered. You can smell the actual fruit. The vinegar base is rich and rounded. There is depth and character in every drop. For seniors managing kidney health or blood pressure, Wimersley offers full ingredient transparency. You know exactly what is in the bottle. You know exactly where it was made. You know exactly what you are putting into your body. That level of honesty is rare in the vinegar industry. If you are managing blood pressure or kidney health, these are 2 of the few vinegars you can use without worry. Earlier I told you there was a simple way to protect yourself. Here it is. When you pick up any bottle of vinegar in a shop, turn it around and look at the ingredient list. If you see the words non-brewed condiment anywhere, put it back. That means it is synthetic. If the label says distilled malt vinegar, know that the product has been stripped of most natural compounds. It is not harmful, but it is not what most people think they are buying. What you want to see is brewed malt vinegar with no other ingredients listed, or apple cider vinegar with the mother. If the liquid is crystal clear, it has been heavily processed. If it is slightly cloudy, that is a good sign. The cloudiness is natural. One more thing. If the bottle does not list a country of origin for the ingredients, be cautious. Transparency is the single best indicator of quality. Brands that have nothing to hide tell you everything. Brands that have something to hide tell you nothing. Check the label, check the color, check the clarity. 3 seconds of attention can protect your health for years. Now you know which vinegar brands to avoid and which ones are actually safe. But this is just one product in your kitchen. Next week, we are covering something even more common and even more dangerous. Subscribe now, and if you are watching on TV, tap your remote so you never get blindsided again.